get a deal with Disney, right? They get a production deal with Disney to make.
Yeah, so that was in 1991 is when they announced that they were going to be working with Disney to create a film, which 4 years later
became
Toy Story.
Which I went back and watched. That movie still holds up.
Yeah, it does.
It's my favorite Pixar movie.
It really does.
Easy.
We watched it not that long ago, and I was like, wow, this movie still...
It's hilarious.
...really holds up. Like,
yeah, it still looks freaking fantastic.
There are a few movies where I can laugh so much I start crying, like tearing up, and that is one of them. It's just so funny, and it's just adorable and cute. The only thing that's weird about that movie, the kids' animation, human animation is weird.
Yeah, well, that's they get
but it was
better.
Back then. Yeah. It's
but at the time, you thought it looked great. I remember seeing that in the movie theater. That was one of the. I'll tell you when I was young enough that I used to movie hop, so we went and saw. Can't remember what the other movie was, but I'm glad we watched Toy Story second, because you never remember the first movie when you movie hop. You always remember the second movie. But I remember leaving there and just like, I didn't even understand it, because, I'd played video games and I had been to arcades that had like just amazing, computer graphics, but it just didn't I didn't understand it. But I guarantee about halfway through that movie, I think it was real. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, I stopped thinking it was a cartoon. And there's so many instances in that movie that are just, and we talk about this with a lot of Disney movies, but Pixar in particular, their comedy will always be funny because they make fun of human nature and social interactions that will always exist.
It's jokes for adults. Like, they know adults are taking their kids to these movies. So you have the cute toys and all that kind of stuff for the kids. You have the cars and stuff for the kids. And you have like these deep, hilarious comedic moments for the adults that are taking their kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so what's interesting about Toy Story 2, not Toy Story 2, the first Toy Story.
Toy Story as well.
There you go, as well, is the idea. So Woody. So when they made this movie, when John Lasseter essentially got the green light to make a full production movie, they kind of submitted some of their storyboards and things like that. And essentially Disney, Katzenberg, I think at the time, was like, you got to make it a little bit more edgy. You got to make it a little bit more dark, I think was the word that they used. And so they made Woody, and you can go and watch some of these like storyboards and some of the stuff that they actually recorded, and they're like an asshole.
Yeah.
Like he's not just like, in the movie he's cocky and he's like, I'm the leader and I know what's best for everybody. That's his character. But like,
I'm Andy's favorite toy.
Right, exactly. No, he was a dick. Like an actual, and it's just crazy. It's like,
yeah, I think the first few rounds of the movie that they had done, I definitely think Woody had a much darker feel.
Yeah, and so he, there's actually a scene where he's like, Andy loves toys that can fly, and he gets on the ball, and then he makes him like, he hurts him in some way, and he's like, well, he also likes toys he can't find. Like a real jerk. Like
it's like, whoa.
Yeah. It's like a real jerky thing. So then they submitted it to Disney, and Disney was like, this isn't good. And they're like, well, yeah, because they're not making the movie they want to make anymore. You have to let them have the artistic freedom to do what they want. You got to give them autonomy to make the movie that they want. And they rewrote Woody like in a week. They rewrote the entire script. Like when watching this documentary, there's about 10 different times when they're like, oh yeah, the entire storyboard was scrapped and we redid it in a weekend. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you freaking, like, that's how much genius you got boiled into your brain? Like, you could just, I could just spit out Toy Story, an entire new character in Toy Story just like that, or Toy Story 2, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Yeah. Just how much, genius is involved in this. And it's, I just, every character in that makes sense. Also, what was it? Oh, somebody was involved with this. Your boy, well, not your boy, but Josh Whedon helped.
He wrote the script.
He helped write the script. That's what I'm talking about. Everybody who's like, anybody had hands on this. Like, this is like the Uber creation of like genius from all over the freaking world.
Can you just imagine, like?
No, like,
it must be insane.
Well, at the time, I'm sure they were all just like, you're just some guy. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're helping me write this. But like, oh, you're going to write Avengers and like direct Avengers in like 20 years.
Make $2 billion.
Yeah. So Toy Story comes out, rave reviews. And I think, they always talk to like Roy Disney and they're like, well, the one thing about that movie that was always so scary is like, it's not complete until 5 minutes before it's out the door. That's how 3D movies were kind of made, that you couldn't see it. Like they would see like the rough sketch, like the triangles, what is that called? In 3D, the skeleton, like the skeleton of it, and then they would, then they would render it and then spit it out. And I heard that with, maybe it was Toy Story 2, one of the Toy Story movies, but there was some kind of issue with the computer, and like every copy got deleted except
Toy Story 2, right?
2, I think it was, but
thought it was the original Toy Story.
They would run these computers like all week, and they're like, if it like we can't stop, like we think about rendering video now. I think about rendering video like. it takes probably about as long as the clip is, depending on the computer. Yeah, but it's depending on like if you're rendering a 5-minute clip, it's probably going to take about 2.5 to 5 minutes to get done. Back then, it probably took 2 days.
Years to render Toy Story like the complete movie.
Yeah, but that's my point. It
takes them like 4 years on average to make a Pixar movie.
Jeez.
Yeah, and that's my point. Is like at any time someone just like trips and bumps the power button, like. Dude.
Will they have an earthquake?
Yeah.
We were at 3 years and 11 months, man.
That's my point. Like this company had every opportunity to fail. So it is literally.
But what was the Pixar movie where like they lost all the copies and someone had it on a backup?
And you know who had the copy? A copy of backup at home? A woman.
Of course.
FYI.
But was that which movie was that?
I think that
was the Toy Story, the first Toy Story.
But of course, you know, they get Tom Hanks to do the voice of Woody, which is like.
Funny story about Woody is that they had actually written him for Billy Crystal. And
what
since obviously Pixar is brand new, they don't know anything about it.
Of course,
Billy Crystal's like, I'm busy.
We're gonna make
stuff to do.
I gotta
host the Oscars again.
City Slickers 2.
City Slickers 3.
Yeah.
You know, so then they offered it to Tom Hanks and he took it, which I think was brilliant because there's no other Woody for me but Tom Hanks. Oh, yeah. Just amazing.
But who took out top billing? Was it Tim Allen or Tom Hanks?
It's got to be
because they're
both
big, right?
Both, yeah.
But Tim Allen, that's like his prime.
Yeah, so this is 1995, so Home Improvement was big. Yeah. Apollo 13 was big. Like,
yeah, both big stars.
And I just
big was big.
Good one.
Nice. But you know, the thing about that movie, just the opening scene with the little army men, and just like
instantly, it's like boom, childhood. Like,
yeah, it's like instant,
watching it as an adult.
Yeah, like, and that's, you know, they talk about that. You know, they obviously had a lot of stories written. There's that whole story about that they wrote all of these movies at a cafe.
Yeah, they wrote Toy Story, Monsters Inc., WALL-E, Finding Nemo, like, just sitting at a cafe, just on.
Why don't
napkins.
I have ideas like that? We should go to a cafe and do this stupid podcast. Come up with better ideas. But it just shows the amount of you know, again, genius that's involved in these guys. But really, at the same time, an idea is an idea, but being able to execute it effectively and do it in a way that is doesn't make everyone around you quit. Because I'm sure there were instances, they talked about Lasseter, they would say, "Oh, how'd you get this great parking spot?" And he's like, "Because I've been here for 4 days. I haven't left. I sleep in my car." And he would tell his assistant, like, "Knock on my door on my car door." You know what I mean? Like, he had a family and stuff like that. And we'll get into that with Toy Story 2, what happened.
And Cars, yes.
Yeah, and Cars as well. So, Toy Story, huge success. But then they talk about the problem, and even Steve Jobs talks about this in the documentary. The bigger problem is always your second project, right? It's sophomore slump. It's got a name for a reason, right? So they're essentially, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of money. They made a tremendous amount of profit off of Toy Story. Talk about like just insane amount of profit.
Made it for cheap then, and the amount of money.
The budget was $30 million. It made $362 at the box office.
Yeah, that back in 1990. What?
Five.
That is a lot of money.
That's an insane amount of money.
That's insane. So of course there's a lot of promise and a lot of pressure, and they're still guided by Steve Jobs. And I remember, you know, watching the documentary. The thing that Lasseter always talked about is Steve knew what were going to be some of the struggles because he went through it. You know, the Apple II was popular, and then the Apple III was garbage. Yeah. So he knew what was going to, you know, how to make sure that you weren't going to, because here's the thing. Anytime you make something popular, everybody doesn't want you to make the same thing, but wants you to make the same thing.
Of course, yeah.
Right?
It's like you need to repeat success, but you can't do the literal exact same thing.
Yeah. So it's almost impossible to do in a lot of instances. But they create A Bug's Life, which is the next big movie. And again, they signed a three movie deal with Disney, and Disney was doing the production. I don't know. I think they own the rights. I think they they own the IP, but they would do all the marketing and the production and what? Jeez. What?
I'm looking at the budget for this skyrocketed to $120 million
for
but
Bug's
look what
Life.
They made. They made 363. So
no, I know, but
they made that back.
I mean, Pixar. What did we say? Toy Story. The budget was 30, and they made about the same amount of money.
Yeah. Well, clearly because you're telling people I'm going to make a 3D fully animated movie, and they're like, right, great, good job. Hopefully your college project works out well. You know what I mean? Like it's nobody even had people were like, what is 3D animation? You know what I mean? And
the glasses?
Like, yeah, exactly. That's my point, is like, it's not just a new idea. It's a new idea at a grand scale. But there's a joke that they said, again, I keep referencing the documentary. Lasseter says, at every single movie we've made, at one point in time, it was the worst movie ever made. And that just shows, like, you know, there's a lot of freedom within Pixar to essentially tell you what you're doing right and doing wrong, and they take it as a, coach to be coached. It's this idea of like, look, I'm just trying to make you better and make us all better. And it's not from a place of, I know I made Toy Story, damn it. You know what I mean? Of
course I know what's better. I made Toy Story. Yeah.
Right. I don't ever get that feeling, when I'm watching, the interviews that they had with all these different people that work at Pixar. But A Bug's Life comes out, which